In this video, I'm going to talk about some books and podcasts that I have been into over the last few weeks here. I'm Doug Cunnington. I'm the founder of Niche Site Project, and I normally talk about affiliate marketing and productivity, but right now I'm having a beer. I splashed more than I thought. I'm having a beer and I'm telling you about content that I've consumed in the last few weeks. So number one, I used to listen to podcasts like constantly, because I commuted in my car for several hours a day, and then at work, there's downtime. You know, even if you're at work for 10 or 12 hours, it's not like you're working like really hard the whole time. In fact, I think it's kind of impossible. So podcasts were a good escape for me while I was at the office back in the day. Anyway, for like the last couple of years, I kind of stopped listening to podcasts as much. I would just listen to maybe 2 or 3 per week, and I would have to be like super interested in whoever was interviewed or the topic. And instead, of listening to so much, I would just, spend time in quiet. So I'm not commuting anymore. I'm not in the car so much. I'm outside more. So as I'm walking outside, it's kind of nice to not listen to anything, just be one with yourself. Anyway, I started listening to podcasts a little bit more, but different ones than I used to listen to. So before we go on, I have been using the Overcast app, which is better, I think, than the normal podcast app on an iPhone. I'm sure if you're using some other device, you may have your favorite app. Anyway, I like this. If you use an iPhone, check out Overcast. I don't think there's anything like really huge that's way better, but there's a couple little features, like you can sort of normalize the audio. So if there are multiple people speaking or the audio goes up and down, it'll sort of level it out. That's nice. You could also listen at different speeds. So you can go a little bit faster or a lot faster, whatever you want to do. So it's not a huge difference, but it just seems to be a little bit like more enjoyable to use than the iOS podcast app. So check it out, put a link. What podcast am I listening to? All right, so I see Akimbo, a podcast by Seth Godin. So that's very good. Seth Godin is very calm, very nice to listen to. He's an excellent speaker. It's sort of like self-help disguised as business. But if you're interested in that sort of thing, check it out. Ask Pat. So that's Pat Flynn's podcast where someone asks him a question and then he answers it. Got the Gary V audio experience. Some of those I totally skip, but at some point I'll see one that I like, listen to Gary talk for a bit. Keynotes are very good. The HBR IdeaCast, so the Harvard Business Review. We have the Monday Morning Podcast. So this is Bill Burr's podcast, and it is completely different than any of the stuff that I've mentioned. If you don't know Bill Burr, he's a stand-up comedian. He's very funny. The podcast is just him talking for, I think, about an hour. Occasionally, he has a guest on there, another stand-up comedian often. If you have sensitive ears or children in the car when you're listening to podcasts, you don't want to listen to this. It's pretty rough around the edges, but it's hilarious, and I love it. Bill Burr is really funny, so check it out. We've got the Side Hustle Show with Nick Loper. I've listened to that one for many years, and again, I went on hiatus on listening to podcasts, but I picked that one back up. Really great stuff. Smart Passive Income. That was my gateway drug to internet marketing, so I still listen to that. We got the Smodcast, which is Kevin Smith's podcast with Scott Mosher. And if you don't know Kevin Smith, he is the indie film director that did like Clerks and Mallrats and Chasing Amy. And he's actually like even better as a podcaster, I think. And then the Tim Ferriss Show. I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, so I sort of pick and choose what I listen to there. There's tons of episodes, but probably for the first couple years of Tim's show, I listened to like everything. Joe Rogan Experience, another great podcaster. Pick and choose on those. There's a lot of stand-up comedians that are on there. There's health and fitness folks. There's rock stars and movie stars and tons of people on that show. So I'll pick and choose to see, who's on there. And then I have my own podcast on there, Survive the 9 to 5, just to make sure the feed's coming through properly. So if you haven't checked out Survive the 9 to 5, it's the podcast that my wife and I do. So what I have here today is, I think it's the number 5 Revolver from Outlaw Brewing, which is about a mile away. It's within walking distance. We just have to cut across a field over here, and we're there. It's very close. Cheers if you're having one, or if you're watching this in the morning, enjoy the coffee. Books that I'm reading. I actually read more fiction than I do nonfiction currently. In the last few weeks, I've been reading the Achilles trilogy, and it's sort of like a crime, CIA, like action kind of series, kind of like Jack Reacher. It's by Tim Tigner, and it's a trilogy, and there's also a novella that is, it kind of comes between, it's a prequel. Actually, I remember it's a prequel. So it's a nice like 4-book series. Another trilogy that I really, really like, and I've read this trilogy twice already. This is by Blake Crouch. It's called Wayward Pines. There was a mini-series, it was a TV show, and M. Night Shyamalan was the producer and or director. Very interesting like book series, sort of plays with your mind. It was super interesting to see how the screenwriters sort of took a storyline from the book, changed the characters, they simplified a lot of things. They can't put as many details in a TV show or a movie as they can in a book, and it was pretty cool to see like the parallels between the two stories, and yet it was different. At this point, I read a ton, I write a lot more than I used to, and I really, really enjoy it. Here are the tips I can give you if you want to read more. It sounds stupid, but you have to make time for it. If you want to finish books, if you want to read books and get to the end, you have to set aside time. Don't have any distractions. You can't like multitask while you're reading. You can't have the TV on. You can't do other things at the same time. You kind of have to focus. And for me, that's part of the beauty. That's why I'm reading all this fiction, right? I can, read fiction, forget about the things going on during the day, things that would distract me, potentially keep me from falling asleep quickly. And I'm immersed in the story. I'm really interested in like what's gonna happen next. And then a little note on the couple books that I mentioned, at least the trilogies, a lot of those are like very short chapters. So maybe 3 to 5 pages, maybe 10 at the max. And then they leave you with a cliffhanger at the end of a chapter. So it like really encourages you to read the next chapter. So if you want to read more, you just have to set aside time. It's like the dumbest suggestion, but it's true. I used to have a lot of trouble finishing books. It would take me 6 months to finish a book. It would be like I would read 1 or 2 pages, I wouldn't finish a chapter, and then I couldn't remember what I read the day before, and it was very like hard to continue or hard to finish a book because I was doing such a small amount. If you can set aside, 20 to 45 minutes or more, like per day or every other day, you could really like make some progress through a book. And then the story, if it's fiction or the points that the nonfiction writer is trying to make, like it will flow together and you'll be able to, form the story or the cohesive ideas as you're reading. So that got a lot deeper than I thought it was going to. Let me know if you are listening to any of the podcasts that I mentioned. Feel free to point out any specific episodes that you really liked. And if you have any fiction recommendations for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm always looking for more stuff to read. So cheers, we'll catch you next time. Thanks.